Prisoner TV show from the 1960s t-shirt with the late great Patrick Magoon, who was an absolute genius. Made one of the few TV shows in the history of TV actually worth watching. And in the story basically revolves around a British secret agent who resigns for unknown reasons, and he gets abducted by supposedly, his superiors, and he's taken to this place called the Village, which is sort of like it's a kind of a Disneyland kind of place. He doesn't really know where it is or why he's really there, and he's referred to by the number 6. I highly recommend the series. It's truly a fantastic piece of television. When he first arrives in the village, there's a scene where he wants to know where he is, and he goes into the local post office and he says, can I have a map of the village? And the person behind the counter gives him a map, and the map just contains the village and the village plan, the immediate environment and location around the village. And then he says, no, can I have a bigger map? Meaning he wanted a map that had a bigger scale, that would show the village in relation to the surrounding countryside and region, so he could figure out where in the world he was. And the person gives him another map, and he opens it up, but all it is the same map, just in a bigger area, a bigger piece of paper, and it shows exactly the same area as the smaller map, so he learns nothing. And the reason why I bring that in is because I think that's a good metaphor for what I want to talk about now, and that's artistic boundaries. There seems to be, this is one of the things that seems to annoy a lot of people, is the notion of like what is art and what shouldn't be art, and that's just sensationalist rubbish and so on. And without taking sides, I have to say that if somebody says something is art and they truly believe it is, then it probably is art. If they're just doing it for shock value, then it probably isn't. By that I mean, if somebody, and this is just my opinion, if somebody considers, a crucifix in a jar of urine to be art and presents to the world for that reason, then, and the artist is sincere, then it's probably art. If the artist is just doing that, or slashing pigs on a naked woman, or throwing pig blood on a naked woman, and is doing it just purely for attention and shock value, then that's not art. That's some kind of like crass entertainment. There now seems to be growing a movement that wants to return back to more traditional forms of art, academic styles of art, where artists have proper training. Obviously I'm biased here because I've had no academic training. Everything I've either learned from books or experimented or just asked other artists for tips. Or I saw a particular painting and I wanted to know how it was done, so I read artist biographies and so forth. And I think I'm a fairly okay artist, fairly competent. So why shouldn't my art, or someone who has no academic training, for instance the cave artists in France from 40,000 years ago, why shouldn't their work also be respected as well? And I think it is mostly respected. I think at the end of the day most people will respect something, or they'll be drawn to an art for a personal or specific reason that's relative to them, and they'll look at a painting no matter what style it is. If it moves them, they have exactly the same notion, exactly the same approach as they would if it was a piece of music. Then it touches them, they'll go for it. I have to admit, a lot of the so-called great art, I'm really not a fan of it. I admire the skill, the technique and the beauty of Vermeer's paintings, but it's something, I wouldn't have any of his paintings on my wall. I don't really care for it. I know it's probably a fabulous historical insight into into life in Delft in Holland at that time. But it does nothing for me. I mean, okay, some of it does. Like the girl with the pearl earring. It's it's such a famous painting. It's been so hyped up. But yeah, that's probably the one painting of his I probably would, you know, at least buy a postcard of and stick it on my wall. I don't, the same thing with Caravaggio. I think his skill is tremendous. His composition is incredible. His subject matter, allegory, it's all fabulous. But it doesn't really do it for me, other than my admiration for his skill. I mean, the guy was a psychopath, but you know, you shouldn't take that away from his ability to be a great artist. And at the time, that probably would have been, considered fantastic art. But the world moves on, and art changes. I tend to be drawn to art that has that has feeling to it, regardless of the style. Whether it could be folk art, it could be native art, it could be outsider art, it could be classical art, modern art, pop art, you name it. But if it has I'm probably not pop art because I don't see much heart or much emotion in pop art. But once it has heart and emotion, it works for me. And I think that'll always be the kind of art I'll want to make. And it's the kind of art I personally try to strive for. I haven't got there yet as much as I want to, but life is long, and I'll continue working at it. But heart, to me, an emotion and feeling, it does come true in a painting, regardless of the style. If it's abstract, if it's anything. You see that in painters' work like Marc Chagall, the Russian Jewish painter. His paintings are full of heart. They're full of beauty, but they're very simple. Charles Burchfield, the American painter, is another one too. They're not technically complex painting, although he was a very accomplished and skillful painter. They're loaded with feeling and emotion, and that really comes through for me in that work. So I'm not fond of these people who say, "Oh, this is proper art and that's proper art," because it's not. When you get down to it, the people, what they're really saying is that this is academically accredited art, that's good, and this is like self-taught or experimental art is not as good. And I don't agree with that at all, because what prestigious art college or academy did the cave painters and such in France go to? It's a non-issue. It's something I just think is not a fair argument to make. And it's also limits. So let's bring us back to the prisoner again. Art should always be pushing forward. It doesn't matter if it's acting, if it's painting, if it's poetry. It should always be striving to find new meanings. It should always be striving to help visualize, or in the term of painting anyway, mankind's relationship to the world around them, to the universe, both the external universe and the internal universe. Limiting art to an academic construct is just like Patrick McGoon's map in The Prisoner. You may get lots and lots and lots of academically brilliant artists who can paint at the level of Vermeer or Rembrandt, but do you want that in the 21st century? Do you really want to go back to the past? There's no real growth in that. It's just saying this is what we like and this is what it is, and therefore it's just like Patrick McGoon's map in The Prisoner. It's just a bigger map of the same territory.